I'd like to welcome a panel of exemplary talent who is on everybody's list of top 5 pan players. He has recruited as many pan players into the love of jazz as he has jazz lovers into the love of pan. His resume of outstanding accomplishments is so long and impressive, we could be here all night scrolling through them. So I'll refer our viewers to his bio page in the description below. The incomparable Victor Provost. Victor, how are you feeling?
I'm excellent. Harry, you got lyrics. That's lyrics.
Thank you, thank you.
Oh
I
man,
love
thank
words,
you.
man.
All of that is very, very kind of you to say, man. Yeah, I appreciate
Okay,
it.
I love words. I hope there's no offense taken if I refer to you as the Pan Bopper.
The Pan Bopper,
Al-
no man. I
Although
love
that's not exclusively what you do.
nah. But I mean, to be fair, it highly like bebop kind of highly informs the way that I think about music.
Yeah,
Um, it's kind of like my default palette of language to draw from.
yeah.
Um, and then from within that sound, um, you know, I can kind of move around. But that's definitely the vehicle that I chose, the language that I chose to pursue.
Very nice. Yeah. So the fascination with melding pan and jazz is not original with you, although some would say you have done it most superbly. How is your style different from your predecessors like Otello Molino, Two Left Smith, Andy Narell, Ron Reed?
Yeah.
How is your approach different?
Well, I have the benefit of being informed by all of those people, right? So like Ron and Andy and Tulef and Othello, um, all kind of came up together around the same generation, right? With
Yeah.
Bugsy and Ray Holman. Um, and so anybody who is a generation below them, myself, Liam Teague, Foster, we had the benefit of listening to them while we were growing up,
Hmm.
right? Um, so I was able to pull from all of those different resources. Um, so that's one way that is different, is that I had the I could grab from Othello and grab from Andy and grab from Bugsy and grab from Ray Holman
Yeah.
and take these things and synthesize them.
Hmm.
Um, and each one of them, in a way, led me to bebop, right? So I think that's probably the distinguishing. I mean, that's how we open the conversation,
Yeah.
and it is the kind of the distinguishing probably feature of my playing, is that I study that language very very kind of very deeply.
Yeah.
Um, and I know Bugsy has a lot of that, a lot of that language that comes out of the Clifford Brown and Charlie Parker school of playing jazz.
Hmm.
Um, uh, Two Left has been playing straight ahead swing for a very long time, right? So
Yeah.
there's all each one of them kind of introduced me to a new concept or a new sound, right? So
Hmm.
when I heard Othello play, I mean when I heard Two Left playing swing, like straight ahead music, playing jazz standards with a jazz rhythm section with upright bass and drums
Right.
and piano, right? And it was just like, okay, well, he's doing the same thing that Bird did, that Charlie Parker did, but he's doing it with a pan instead of a
Right.
a horn. Um, or someone, or Andy, for example. I mean, his library has been, in my playlist since as long as I could remember. My father loved his, loves his music. So all of the records that were on like Windham Hill, um, all those records he was making on the West Coast, that was Marion, um, marrying calypso with Afro-Cuban music and improvisation, and then listening to the Caribbean Jazz Project in the 90s
Right.
kind of introduced me to Paquito de Rivera's playing. Paquito comes out of the Charlie Parker School, right? So all of these things
Yeah.
kind of started leading me back to bebop for real.
Yeah.
Um, my teacher was a man named Rudy Wells, and maybe we could talk about him a little bit later. Uh,
Sure.
but Mr. Wells was also a kind of an aficionado of bebop, and he went to Berklee School of Music. Before
Uh-huh.
they took pan players, he went there, and they said, "Well, yeah, it's cool you're here, but you have to study vibes. You can't study pans." So he learned how to play vibes. He studied with Milt Jackson, and him and Two Left were boys. Him and Othello were boys, So it's all kind of part of that lineage. But the thing, it all kept pointing me back to bop,
Yeah.
as like this
Yeah.
originate this language. It's not the original jazz language, but it is the language that, like today, when you listen to you listen to anybody that's kind of living in that world of jazz or Black American music or improvised American music, then you're going to hear that language in their playing for sure.
Right. Right. Really. So does that set you on a mission with Pan to explore the unbeaten path, or are you just naturally responding to your vocation?
Yeah, I mean it's a little. I guess it's a little bit of both. I don't know
Mhm.
why I don't know what it was about that music that kind of that spoke to me, right?
Mhm.
So I'm from St. John, Virgin Islands, which is a very small island, kind of in the middle of the Caribbean.
Yeah.
Um, and so I grew up in a remote part of this remote island.
Oh, really?
Um,
How remote can you get?
yeah, exactly. Um, I was there last week, and I had to, you take a plane and you land in St. Thomas, and then you take a taxi from the airport to go to Red Hook, and then you get on a boat, and then you go from the boat to the next island to St. John, and then you get in another car and drive out, all the way out south where I live,
Wow.
and so it's this kind of smallish remote place, and it's not
Yeah.
like there was jazz clubs or anything that I could go and listen to this music, right? So the way that I was exposed to it was through Mr. Wells, through the steel band, right?
Yeah.
I played in a steel band called Steel Unlimited 2, and in that band he would kind of program some progressive music. So I remember we played some Chuck Mangione, we played Chick Corea Spain, and that was the tune
Uh-huh.
that kind of introduced me at that point in my life to what jazz sounded like. I went home
Right.
and told my father we're playing a song called Spain by Chick Corea. And my father happened to have these records. He was like, "Yeah, I have that record." He put it on for me. And then I started just taking out other records. And
Yeah.
luckily my father has a good taste in music. So it was like every record I pulled out was just as bad as the next one. It was like the first, Chick Corea, he put that on, um and then he had the Chuck Mangione, and then he had Spyro Gyra, and then Cannonball Adderley and Miles Davis, and Hugh Masekela, and Stan Getz and
Uh,
Gilberto, and it's just like all of these, Herb Alpert, all these great records, man. Lucky Dube,
yeah.
um, from kind of like from all over. So the music, that music just kind of spoke to me. Jazz spoke
Yeah.
to me. Bebop spoke to me. I mean, it was
Yeah.
my favorite record in that bunch was Miles Davis' Kind of Blue, and I think that was like 1958. I think is when Kind of Blue came. I'm not
Yeah.
good with dates, so somebody could Wikipedia that, and somebody could
Yeah.
Google that and correct me.
It was the
Um,
50s.
yeah, it was the 50s, and I ain't got no connection to jazz music, American jazz in the 50s. I was a 12-year-old boy on the island of St. John, and in my father's like little side bedroom. Um, but there was something about it, man, that spoke to me, and I've just kind of been following that path ever since.
Yeah. Talk
It
about
wasn't
path.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
it wasn't necessarily like, it wasn't necessarily that I wanted to do something with that I thought was new. It's just that I played pan, like this is the instrument that I play, and that's the music that I like. So I have to play it on the instrument that I play, right?
That makes sense. Yeah. So talk about path. Do you feel, are you where you want to be on your path right now, or are there bigger hills to climb?
But I don't think I'll ever be where I want to be.
Good
But I'm
answer.
also, yeah. But I'm also happy, I'm also happy with where I am.
Uh-huh.
Part of this musician's life, man, is a kind of a life of striving, of pushing, um, of trying to move the ball down the field, you
Yeah.
know, and so I feel like there is a long path that is still kind of laid out ahead of me,
Uh-huh.
um, with some forks in the road. You never, you know,
Obviously.
with some forks in the road, and but yeah, I mean, I still very much, I practice all the time. I write. Um, I do a lot of teaching these days.
Yeah.
Um, if there's a fork in the road, kind of ahead, where this one's leading to more teaching and this one's leading to more playing, I'm probably going to try to take that more playing route, that I got off of during COVID, right?
Yes.
So like during COVID, it was plenty playing and touring and writing. And
Right.
during COVID, I had to pivot real quick, like a lot of my peers, into a more
Hmm.
kind of teaching heavy schedule.
Right.
Um, and so I'm starting to kind of ease that off a little bit as well.
I see. Yeah. You're answering a lot of the questions I had posted for you in advance.
Well, it's been a great interview. Thanks for your time.
I consider the dichotomy between the performance and the teaching environments. But we'll just move ahead here. So even with that path and the forks that come in the road, is there an ultimate vision that gives you direction in terms of where you're moving?
Man, I just want to stay happy and make sure that my family is happy and provided for.
Uh-huh.
It is. I don't have these grand ambitions of um, of stardom or recognition, or a 365-day a year touring calendar, or Grammys or Emmys or anything like that. I just want to make good music
Hmm.
that makes people feel good, makes them think,
Hmm.
right? Because you can't feel good all the time. If you feel good all the time, then you never feel good.
That's
So I want to
right.
make music that makes people feel good, but it makes them think.
Yeah.
I want to make music that I like, and I want to make sure that my family is happy and provided for, man, and safe and healthy. Those are
Good. Yeah.
that's my everyday kind of wake up and hit the ground running.
Right. So jazz is not an easy sell today. It's become kind of esoteric. Pan jazz is even more remote. And since COVID, it's even tougher now for musicians to eke out a living. How have these factors affected you, and how are you dealing with those changes?
Yeah. So I tell people, I joke with people that I play like some of this very niche music, right? So not popular music on a not popular instrument, right? And on an instrument that is not typically associated with our music to begin with, right? So it's niche music with a niche instrument. But I also have the benefit of being novel, right? Of doing something interesting inside a space that um, that's very saturated, right? So
Yeah.
to the same way that you said, jazz is becoming esoteric, and um, it's becoming less of a popular music. That might be the case, but there's probably more jazz students in university right now than there were 10 years ago.
That's
Right? So like
interesting.
more and more students are going to study this music. Which means they're gonna have to find gigs or make
That's
gigs,
right.
right? They're gonna make gigs for themselves. So I guess the answer to, there's a couple ways to answer that question. But the first part is that being a musician today, especially a jazz musician, right, almost by its nature makes you an independent artist, right? Very few, very few jazz musicians are being signed to Universal Records, right? So you're almost always going to be, or RCA, right? You'll almost always be an independent artist or signed to one of the jazz labels, right? And so even the major jazz labels are relatively small. Blue Note,
Yeah.
I don't even know if ECM is still there. The ones that I always, that I always see are like Blue Note or Mac Avenue. Those are good ones. Impulse, right? And so by nature, by nature, you're an independent artist, which just means you need to be more entrepreneurial, because you need to make more opportunities for yourself to play, rather than asking, trying to get into this club or that club. You create a scene that people want to be a part of.
Right.
Now, as for me personally, the way that, I hinted at this earlier, the way that I navigated COVID was that I was very fortunate that I have, over the last decade or so, have been able to develop an academic career along with my performance career, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was something that I pretty much knew that I wanted to do. Because I enjoy teaching, and I had a model. My model was a vibraphonist named Stefan Harris, and I only met Stefan recently. But even 15 years ago, when I heard Stefan for the first time and then saw him, right, and saw him operating in these spaces, and he was teaching at that time. I think he was at NYU, at New York University. But he was as strong an educator as he was a player and a composer, right? And I really admired that, because there are, there's great educators everywhere, and there are great players everywhere. But a lot of times you find that great players don't make great educators. And on the flip side is that you have a lot of people that are very good at talking about playing, but not very good at playing. It's almost to be expected. Like it's very difficult to have a multi-dimensional focus and get to a high enough level in both areas. You have to have a passion for both of those things. And so if your passion is teaching and theory, then that's where you spend your time. You don't spend your time in the practice room. And if your passion is playing, then you don't spend your time writing and reading and lecturing. So I have I have the kind of the implicit benefit of being attracted to both of those things.
Wow.
And so when COVID hit, I was working at two different colleges, a university here in Fairfax, Virginia, George Mason University, where I've been teaching for the last 10 years. Here I have a studio of Pan students. So if you are a panist and you want to study jazz, my studio lives inside the jazz studies department. So you can come audition on Pan, and you can get a music a degree in music. You get a BM, a bachelor's in music, and we also have a master's in music and a DMA, so a doctorate in music. So I don't know of any other places. And again, y'all can Google this and correct me, but I'm not sure of any other schools where you can come audition on Pan and get a doctorate of music degree.
Wow.
You
Specializing
can
in Pan.
specialize in jazz with Pan as the primary instrument.
Right.
Yeah, specialize in jazz with Pan as the primary instrument. So I do that here at Mason. I also teach the jazz improv class. I was teaching it right up until our call started. I ran across the hall into this classroom. And then I also teach at Montgomery College, which is a 2-year school here in Rockville, Maryland. And at that school, I teach in the world music department. So I teach the honors world music class, which is a classroom course. So I had these teaching gigs. And when COVID hit, I also had a nice little hefty calendar, like a lot of my peers, man. We were getting ready to go out and have our busy springs. I was just talking to a fellow musician the other day that was like, man, right before COVID hit, I was getting ready to pay off my house. Just with the gigs I had that spring. He said he was getting ready to pay off his house. But I was lucky enough to kind of pivot into, because all of the teaching went online very quickly, but very few of the gigs went online quickly. Eventually some started coming up, some of those online gigs, but I didn't like doing those at all. I kind of stayed away from that. So I was able to quickly kind of pivot more, spend more of my energy moving in the education space so that I can stay happy, keep food on my table, keep my family safe and secure, etc.
Okay. Sounds good. So apart from the teaching that's going on right now, is there anything else cooking for you, like music projects?
Yeah, I mean, always. So right now, let's see. So right now I'm working on a joint record that is 99% mixed. So it needs to be, there's one more tune that we're mixing and then master artwork. And then we're going to decide if it goes on a label or we put it out independently. And that's with my friend Alex Brown. He's a great piano player. He was on my first record. He and I played together with Paquito de Rivera in Paquito's band. Alex just won a Grammy last month a couple months ago with the group Imani Wins. And so Alex and I have a joint project that's getting ready to come out, I would say imminently, anytime now.
Cool.
As soon as we can get it kind of finished and mixed and get the artwork and get it out there into the world. Also, I'm working on a steel band, an album of steel band music, of my own compositions for steel band, with Dan Moore, Dr. Dan Moore at the University of Iowa in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. So last summer 2023, I went out there and his band had learned all of the music through the semester, over the course of about a semester and a half. And then he recorded it all with the band there. And then I went out in the summer to do overdubs and start the mixing process and all of that stuff. So that should be coming out soon as well. Maybe both those things drop close around the same time.
And those your music, that's your music you did
it's all original compositions. Yeah, all original compositions. Yeah.
Yeah. Excellent. Excellent. So I know there's a challenge with marketing and distribution, like there is with music on the whole right now. You guys have any special approach to that? Yeah. Any?
It's I don't know that there is a special approach. I mean, I think you just have to you have to use your intuition. clearly there's only so much energy you can put into, you can allocate at one time,
Mhm.
right? And so when you're getting ready to put a record out, it takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of psychic energy and physical energy, right? Spiritual energy. It all has to be kind of focused on the same thing. So when the record is coming out, you have to be dedicating a lot of your time to making sure that you're out there playing, right? So you have to set up all your, set up any touring that's going to happen, any gigs
Right.
to in advance of that record coming out, so that could be happening.
Right.
And just organic, just trying to grow as an independent artist, man. It's just trying to make sure that we're always cultivating an audience.
Yes. Yes.
Um, if it if it ends up on a record label, then there's always some support there from the label. The label
Right.
will do some legwork and stuff like that. But for the most
Mhm.
part, it's just us kind of out there
Yeah.
sending messages and asking people that support us to continue supporting us.
Right.
If you like the music, make it make it your profile picture. These kinds of things, right? Just draw awareness to the project.
Mhm. There's a trend now that I'm noticing, particularly in Trinidad with the new uh, pan entrepreneurs. Um, it seems like they've come to a realization, well, they have the culture and the art form, but
Mhm.
what's lacking is some kind of collaboration with a commercial sector that has the know-how on how to get the product out there.
Yeah,
I see that with Mitco, the new pan factory,
yeah,
and there's Panotation with Mia
yeah.
Gormandy. So you see these collaborations emerging with
Right.
the commercial sector. Is that something you ever look at?
So what would that look like? Do you mean like corporate sponsors or?
I was not talking so much as like corporate money, but
Mhm.
as far as expertise in getting the product out there.
Yeah, I mean, well, that used to be record labels. That was the record industry. That
Right.
was the expertise was there. That's why you wanted to get on a label. So I mean, the whole industry has changed right now. Um, has been changing for the last decade or so, the last 20 years almost, but it's changing faster than ever now um, because of social media, because of AI, right? So all of these things are kind of like throwing us into hyperdrive in terms of how the music industry is changing.
Yeah.
Um, the expertise of getting the music out there essentially has to recognize two things, which is where is out there
Hmm.
and who is out there, right? So who
Right.
wants to listen to my music, right? Um, and how should I allocate my resources, or how should we allocate our resources to find those people,
Right.
you know? Um, and I think for a genre like mine, which is niche, which is not popular music, um, I I I think the kind of the grassroots organic way of growing that audience is kind of the only way in town right now. I mean,
Yeah.
it's similar to the every now and then a conversation starts about how come you don't hear Pan on the radio in Trinidad,
Good question.
right? So like that conversation, that, oh, you never hear Pan on the radio in Trinidad, or maybe you only hear Pan on the radio like during carnival time. But what do you really hear? You hear soca, right? And then probably more than ever, know you hear like dancehall, right? So you
Yeah.
hear like music from Jamaica or from any other islands, right?
Right.
But you're not really hearing Pan. Um, so Pan is competing with popular music. You were mentioning some of the Pan entrepreneurs in Trinidad. Like they're the business entrepreneurs like Akua and Mia, right, with their businesses. But
Yeah.
then I also see some young players that are approaching their persona, their public image, their what's the word I'm looking for? Um, their brand. They're approaching their brand from a very thoughtful perspective, right? Very deliberate, you
Yeah.
know, players, young players in Trinidad that that are building a brand, especially online, um, that are going to end up, I think their goal is to end up kind of competing inside that popular music space and getting some of that audience from this, from soca that wouldn't necessarily be like, oh, let me go and check out some Pan music.
Yeah.
But when you see Pan like playing your favorite soca song, right, and and the player real looks good and is dancing and playing with energy and dresses nice and is a brand,
Right.
um, then I think I've seen that, I've noticed that kind of
Mhm.
coming out of the Caribbean in general, right?
Yes.
Um, but out of Trinidad kind of specifically.
Yeah. So, what excites you about the current direction of Pan, just in general, just the art form? What's exciting
Um,
about it?
so many things. So many things. So the one, that what I just mentioned, right, is like
Yeah.
seeing the entrepreneurial aspects of it. Um, I the internationality of Pan excites me. Um, there's a, you know, I, we were just chatting on Instagram earlier, man, but there's an account on Instagram that I ran into, which is the steel band at Nelson Mandela University in South Africa.
Yes.
And and so the young man exchanged pleasantries on Instagram and listening, watching their videos, and they like this is serious business. And Pan been in South Africa for a long time now,
Right.
so there's a stronghold there. Um, but just seeing it in Japan and in Switzerland and Finland and Nigeria, Canada, um, Puerto Rico and Cuba,
Yeah.
um, is I think is very encouraging. I'm also encouraged by, especially by, there's something exciting about the diaspora operating inside Trinidad as well. So I'm thinking of like, um, young, some of these young arrangers from Brooklyn, and I can't even call them young because we're all, they may be a couple years young. I have a few years on them, but
Yeah.
the names, all the names, Andre and Kendall and the Cats, Mark, um, Odie, all of these guys that have been doing, just doing great work in the Panorama space in Trinidad.
Yes.
Um, that kind of thing excites me because it's like full circle, you
Yeah.
know, full circle for the diaspora to come back and contribute back to
Right.
to Trinidad,
Yeah.
with ideas that are a blend, a kind of a syncretic, um, a blend of Trinidad culture, Brooklyn culture, Brooklyn Trini culture,
Hmm.
New Yorkers, right? All of that,
Yeah.
all of those energies together. So that excites me, man. I really like listening to that music. I'm excited. I'm excited about the next crop of Pan players, the generation below me, um, not below me, under me, younger than me, generation younger than me, that's coming up with all this technology,
Yeah.
right? Because man, there's nothing to hold, nothing to hold them back. All of the information that when I was trying to figure out how to play jazz, I would have to, and I had it good because at least when I was growing up, we had CDs and tapes, right? And so like the generation older than me would say, "Oh, well, we had records, right? We have to put on the needle on the record on the same place over and over again to learn this, to learn this song." But I didn't have a record store in St. John. The internet had just started, and I used to have to send away, like mail away for CDs to come and wait months for the CD to come. And books, you just couldn't. Books are expensive. You couldn't find them. There was no bookstore in St. John, and so all of that stuff that I used to send away for and wait months and then pour over it is just instantly available now. You find anything, YouTube, Scribed, the internet. Every solo that's worth transcribing has been transcribed by somebody and put up on YouTube, right? So I'm excited to. I'm excited to see what that generation does with this information.
Yeah. I know you don't. I'm not sure. You ever got deeply involved in Panorama arrangements and the whole Panorama scene in Trinidad?
Mm-hmm.
But Panorama festivals are growing. Not just in Trinidad, but the other Caribbean islands and internationally.
Yeah.
We got the New York, Toronto, London, Japan, France. It's really growing. How do you see that? What does that bode for the evolution of the art form? I know most of it is emulating the Trinidad model.
Yeah.
But it's spreading. But we're stuck in a pattern here.
Oh, boy. Harry, you put me in the. All right, so you're gonna make me talk about Panorama.
Yes.
Come, let's go.
Let's go.
I'm trying to build an audience, not alienate an audience, Harry.
That's how it starts.
Friends, not enemies, Harry. So I feel Panorama is a hybrid it's a hybrid culture music competition, right? So it's not strictly a musical competition, and it's not strictly a cultural competition. But if you don't go into that space with a musical understanding that is rooted in a cultural understanding, then you're probably not going to be very successful. All right. And I say that to maybe shine light on the question that we all seem to be always asking, which is like, okay, well, Panorama, same bands winning every year, same arranger winning every year because you're a bad arranger, right? Shout out Duvon, that's my boy. Right? Is it becoming too formulaic? Is there a formula that wins? And now that the formula wins, do you just have to keep repeating the formula? Well, what's the flip side to that? It's not a competition. It's not an innovative competition, right? Because culture is not. It's very difficult to innovate culture. Culture is something that is generational by necessity. It's passed on over generations and it changes, it flexes in time, but there's a continuity that's required in order to call it culture. So as soon as that continuity is broken, then we're no longer talking about the culture anymore, right? So that's why you can't just go into a Panorama competition and play some rock and roll or some swing, right? Okay. Now you can try to push the innovative envelope, right?
Yeah.
But I think there's a pretty strong right now. There's a clear kind of a clear end of that envelope, and so if you go beyond that by choice, then you're making an innovative statement.
Yeah.
But you're not trying to win. Right? And that's fine. I mean, you can make innovative statements, and you can you can color outside the lines. I think it becomes the most frustrating for the arrangers that see themselves as trying to live right on that boundary, right? Because that's what all artists really want to do, is to make a space for themselves where their voice is unique, right? And
Yeah.
so the thing that will make that makes these arrangers feel great is like when my unique voice and my unique ideas are appreciated by the people that are judging this competition, you know.
Yeah.
So that's those are my those are my thoughts on Panorama. I do not have any plans. Nobody has ever called me, nor do I think they will ever call me. And if they do, I don't think I would ever say yes.
Yeah.
Even though it would be a great honor. I mean, that's the highest level of steel bandsmanship in the world, right? It's like
Yeah.
that's every composer's dream, is to have a Trinidad steel band play their steel band, their
Yeah.
compositions, because that is the highest level, hands down. But man, to do it in the context of a competition like Panorama
Right.
is, yeah, that's not for me.
Yeah. I get you. I get you. Um, would that be something you would welcome outside of the whole
Oh
panorama
yeah, for sure.
environment?
I mean,
Yeah.
I've made it known. I made it obvious to the, to my friends in Trinidad that I'm looking for opportunities to work with steel bands there, for sure.
Nice.
You know,
Yeah.
the National Steel Symphony Orchestra, any of the
Hmm.
university bands down there. I used to be in All Stars Panyard because Mr. Wells was in All Stars, and so
Okay.
um, it just it would be a lot of fun, man. It would be a great honor for sure.
Hmm. So a little bit about you as an educator. As we spoke earlier, you're in the academic world. You're an adjunct professor, right?
Hmm.
Of music at the George Mason University.
Yeah.
Um, what are your views on how Pan is taught in the educational system in the US, from junior high, senior high to the colleges? Is there a flow there, or
It depends on in some areas there's a flow, right? In like around the Charleston area, South Carolina, for example,
Mhm.
um, there's an enclave there of steel bands that are set up in such a way so you could start playing pan in elementary school and play elementary, middle, high school. So you could play pan for 12 years while you're in school,
Wow.
right? Or maybe 10 years or something like that. I don't know if you start in kindergarten, but just, start real young.
Hmm.
Um, and so many of the elementary schools, the middle schools, and the high schools down in this area have steel bands and steel band programs embedded in the school, right?
Right.
For as classes that these students take, right? As music
Yeah.
classes. Um, and so you have enclaves like that.
Right.
Um, and then of course there's many, there's a guy named Brandon Haskett that teaches up in Michigan. He teaches at a university in Michigan. I can't remember which one now. I think it's Michigan. Um, that has been trying to survey exactly how many steel bands are in operation in the United States.
Right.
Um, and I think his last count was somewhere over 800 school steel bands. Right, so that's like all school levels and universities. So there's a lot of universities that have steel bands. Um, and there's some universities that have had pan for what, over 40 years now, going up 50 years, some of them, right? A very long
Hmm.
time. How the pan is taught,
That's the next thing.
that's that's the next thing. Pan and pan and gamelan and taiko drumming and and like West African drumming and dance, all kind of made its way in. Those art forms all made their way into the U.S. education system around the same time.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it was the 70s or the 80s, but it was it was kind of during a time where they were trying to figure out how to re-engage students in music, right?
Yeah.
Because for a long time it was just marching band or symphony, right? And kids don't have any connection to that. And so you give them something novel, something new, something exotic, right? And now all of a sudden, now they're engaged, now they're interested, right?
Right.
But the problem that I think is obvious to everybody is that the pan is of a place and of a people and of a time. And when you take it out of that place and away from those people without acknowledging it as such, then you can't really teach it. You can't really teach it properly. You know what I'm saying? And so the obvious thing is like, and pan is unique, man. I don't think like we really give enough. We don't really give enough thought to just how unique an instrument this is. Just check it out. It's like a world instrument. That's what they would call it here, right? In America, yes. It's a world instrument, right? Well, what are some other world instruments? Okay, what are some other instruments that are associated with other places in the world, like the tabla or the sitar, or the gamelan that I mentioned, right? That when you hear these instruments, you are kind of like psychologically transported there. Okay. But the pan is unique because it is as much a product of Trinidadian innovation as it is of colonialism. It lives on the boundary of Western and non-Western instrument.
Absolutely.
Right? So it was born. It's part of a continuum of African drumming traditions, right? Part of that continuum, which means that it was born and raised in that tradition. It was disseminated in that tradition. It's taught in that tradition, right? But it's tuned to a Western tuning system, a chromatic tuning system,
exactly.
Right? Which means that you can implement it in this Western music, and you can implement it in Western musical systems, including teaching systems and notation systems. And so the biggest disconnect with the way that we teach pan in the United States, in large part, not everywhere. I mean, everybody has slightly different ways of doing it.
Yeah.
But especially in the university system, where you essentially have 16 weeks with these students and you have to mount a concert at the end of 16 weeks. They have to play songs, right? So you have to disseminate that information to them as quickly as possible in a way that they are most familiar with. And for them, that means written notation, right? But notation, the ability to read notation it's not an inclusive, it's an exclusive. It's an exclusive approach because it excludes people that can't read music. You see, anybody can learn by rote. It might take some people longer to learn by rote, right? But just about anybody could sit down with enough time and learn parts by memory, right? Learn parts by rote and by memory. And so that, that's the breakdown. And I'm guilty of it. I mean, we definitely read in my band, but every semester I teach them something by rote, both for my benefit and for theirs.
Right.
Because when the first arrangements I ever did, I was 16, 17. I was in high school, and I was arranging for a little steel band in St. John. And we didn't read and we didn't write.
Right.
So it was just by rote and it was just by ear, and it would do, the vibe. You walk into the pan yard, give some parts. Hopefully it goes well. And then hopefully they remember for the next semester. So I try to keep that. I try to keep that sharp. I also try to use that as a vehicle for explaining the cultural significance of this instrument.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I think that it's a tough nut to crack, man. I mean, there's no perfect way of doing it,
Right.
So the system itself would have to change. There are things that we can change about the system, about the education system, that would make it easier. Like we can move away from this requiring, like, it's a very concert based, you have to play a concert. We're preparing for the first day of class. What are we doing? Okay, well, we have to start learning these charts, because in 16 weeks we have to play a concert of, we have to play for 25 minutes or half an hour in front of people. And those people don't want to sit down for half an hour and listen to me talk about the instrument, or play chromatic scale, or do exercises, or any of the things that we really should be requiring to excel as musicians, right?
Yeah.
And it would take, first of all, there's not many bands in the United States, college bands in the United States, that could play any part of any Panorama tune, much less a whole Panorama tune, by rote. That's not happening, right? So
yeah, there are few, but rare.
Very few, very rare.
On the other hand, there's a strong drive, like in the Caribbean, particularly in Trinidad, to elevate music literacy, to get the kids now reading music. So it's not that they're moving away from the rote, but they're now incorporating the literacy programs. Yeah. Where do you find that fine balance?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, because and all reading, like a band that reads exclusively is by nature excluding people that can't read, right?
Yeah.
So in Trinidad, in a space like Trinidad, you can bring in students that play, like you can bring in people from the community that play pan already, and say, okay, well, look, this is the line, this is the notes on the staff, this is what, this is a half note or a whole note, or whatever you call it in Trinidad, quaver, semi-demi, hemi-quavers, all of those. And you can teach music literacy, but you can't teach somebody that reads notes on a page how to swing. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can't teach them how to actually groove and play those grooves. So that, I think, is the most exciting thing, man. It's like, you have in Trinidad, you're going to have a whole population of young pan players that have the feel, like know what that swing is supposed to feel like, but can also learn very quickly, very, very quickly, without too much drilling, without too much repetition, because they're reading, because they're reading very well. Yeah.
That's very good. Yeah.
Yeah. And we should, like, kind of acknowledge, I mean, there's a whole lineage of people that have been doing this in the pan space for a very long time. And I a few names come to mind. Maureen Clement and Don Bastian come to mind. But like, clearly now there's a lineage that's coming out of Liam Teague's program at NIU, right? And Mia Gormandy is a primary kind of exponent for that at UTT. So yeah, I mean, it's worth acknowledging this kind of cycle.
Yeah. Victor, was your first musical instrument a pan, or did you?
I took classical piano lessons from age 8 or 9, from age 9 till 13. And I was good. Like, I I had facility. I used to compete in these classical competitions in the Virgin Islands and place very high. But I pretty much stopped playing piano when I started playing pan. I mean, I still play to to write and play functionally.
Right.
But I stopped doing, I stopped taking lessons and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I have, I have an understanding of the keyboard. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So it's safe to say the pan came before the jazz.
Yeah.
Pan came before the
Absolutely.
jazz. So
Yeah.
that's how
Yeah.
and
The
then the
first song I
melding
ever
too.
learned to play on pan was the theme from Chariots of Fire. The running theme from Chariots of Fire. But we used to
Yeah.
play as a calypso
Yeah.
real fast,
Yeah. And
That was
when
Mr.
did you
Wells.
yeah. When did you own your first pan?
Oh boy. When did I own it? So 1995, Hurricane Marilyn interrupted, kind of disbanded our group. So I was in Steel Unlimited from 1990 to 1995 with Mr. Wells.
Okay.
And then when Hurricane Marilyn came, the schools went to split schedules and the boat system was all messed up. So it was difficult to get back and forth from St. Thomas to St. John.
Yeah.
So we stopped playing. But I think it was around that time, 1995. So I was 14 years old.
Yeah.
That my parents bought me my first pan.
Okay.
And I was, I definitely acknowledge that, acknowledge that privilege, man, that I was in a band with maybe 30 or 35, about 30 other friends, right? Other peers. And I think two of us own a pan. You know what I'm saying? So like my parents definitely went out of their way to kind of help me cultivate that interest even after the band stopped. And I got, when I was about 14 years old, I got my first pan. And it used to go immediately when started trying to go play in front of the businesses, right? And try to make a little money here and there.
Yeah.
And there was a store in St. John called Bambula that used to sell pans to like a tourist, like the little tourist pans. And so I used to play outside that shop and, things like that.
Well, talk about niche. We're getting deeper into the niche now. That pan you play.
Yeah.
That's another niche.
Yeah, isn't that?
Tell us about that pan.
Yeah, so it's I could show you. I brought it. I don't know how well it's gonna come across on this video, but
yeah,
I brought it here so you could see. It's a low G. It's a low
right.
G tenor pan, right? And I mean it's not a new innovation. People,
Right.
Folks have been building these kind of oversized pans for a long time. I first saw a low G pan in probably 2005 that Ellie Manette had built, and I saw it in West Virginia. My friend Glenn Rousey had it, and he showed it to me. But it's the only one that I had seen. And then a builder in Philadelphia named Kyle Dunleavy called me probably about a decade later, 2015. I think we ran into each other in like 2013. And I mentioned this pan. I said, man, I saw this low G pan a few years ago, and I've never seen one since, but it was sweet, And a couple of years went by, and Kyle called me. He said, "Hey, you remember when you said that you like that low G? Well, I built a couple. Do you want to go? You want to come check it out?" And I went up, and this is, that's the G below middle C, that low G down there.
Yeah.
So it goes from G below,
Yeah,
to the C above the staff. High C.
Yeah,
So it's,
yeah.
it doesn't have all the high notes that the tenor has, but for me, it's closer to the range of the trumpet, and it's closer to the range of the vibraphone. It's closer to the range of the alto saxophone, and these are all the instruments that I've been trying to emulate in my own playing. So
Got it. Wow. And your mallets.
Mallet man, all the way. Well, I don't know. Should we call them mallets or sticks? Gotta be careful. Gotta be
I
careful,
know.
Harry. Gotta be careful. Yeah, boy. Yeah, Mallet Man, Emerald Gray. Emerald Gray.
Yeah.
Um, there's a few there are a few companies out there, larger corporations,
Yeah.
that are building sticks.
Yeah.
And I was endorsing for a while. I was endorsing one. But man, Emerald lives up the road, and I don't need no corporate endorsement when I have Emerald in my
Yeah.
corner, man.
I hear you.
um, yeah, he's been an incredible friend, and supporter, and so he always will have my support. Malletman.com.
All right. So give me 5 pan players whose work you respect and admire.
Jaden Nunez, Teague-Nunez. I can't remember if it's Nunez Teague or Teague-Nunez.
Teague-Nunez.
Yeah, Jaden Teague-Nunez. I admire that young man. I think that is remarkable. And it's easy to say, oh well, the apple don't fall from the tree,
Yeah.
fall from the tree. But that he practices a lot. He practices a lot. I mean, he didn't just inherit it from his father through a blood transfusion and DNA.
Yeah.
He sounds like that because for the same reason that Liam sounds like that, because they both practice very, very hard, very seriously. So I'm impressed with him. And if I could only name 5, all right. So let me see. Luke Walker, is a very talented young pianist that I met. I met a few years ago, and most recently hung out with at Berkeley. And I have to shout out, several of my students. So Dominic Lewis, who is originally from Barbados. Man, you're gonna really make me keep it to 5. I also want to shout out
Oh, take it out. Take it out.
Judah Goodad also in Barbados, but a former student of mine, Dominic Lewis, who graduated from Mason, that lives in Maryland now, and then Ronald Lee Jr., who's originally from Trinidad. I mean, from St. John. I known Ronald since he was a young boy, and watched him grow up. He also came to Mason and studied here. And L.J. Brathwaite. Those are some names that people should be aware of. The other day I saw Kareem Thompson post on Facebook the future of Pan, and there was about 15 names on there, and it seemed like the list kept getting longer. People would say, "Boy, you're forgetting so and so. You're forgetting so and so," and man, that was just such a beautiful thing to see, because he's right.
Yeah.
There's a bright future, man. There's a bright future. And he said, I forget exactly what his post said, but it was something like, keep at it, even if you feel like you're not getting the calls or the recognition you deserve. There's a lot of really strong players out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. Yeah. So did we miss anything that you'd like to share that we didn't cover?
I mean, probably.
It could take all night.
Yeah, probably, but I can't think of anything other than just thank you, thanks for the platform, and I appreciate it. It's good to see your face, man.
Thank you.
I feel like we've been connected for about.
That's right.
We're gonna age ourselves now. It's probably going on about 20
while.
years. Yeah, about 20 years since we first got connected, man. And it's good to see your face.
Nice. Same here. So where can people find you? Your music online, your website?
Yeah, website is easy. It's victorprovost.com. Facebook, Victor Provost.
Yeah.
Victor Provost Music. Instagram, Victor Provost Music. Where else? Yeah, I have music all over Spotify and YouTube, Apple Music, all of those, right? Amazon, all the streamings. yeah, if you're interested in talking about coming to Mason to study, you can email me at vprovost@gmu.edu. Otherwise, I'm easy to find, man, and I think people know that I'm accessible. Like if you reach out, if you send me a DM, if you have a question, if you're a young pan player coming up and you just, it's like, hey, how did you do that? Or why did you play that? Or how do you think about XYZ? I'm always happy to engage, because that's what people did for me when I was growing up. I couldn't do it on Instagram, but if I had an opportunity to ask a more seasoned musician, a question about their playing or who they're listening to or who I should be listening to, they were always kind of, forthcoming with me. So I want to reciprocate that.
Yeah. Wow. Victor, thank you so much for agreeing to come on the podcast and giving us some insight into your journey as a panist. And I wish you continued success, man.
Oh, man, it's a real pleasure, Ari. Thank you.
All the best.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay. Take care. The Pan Players podcast is brought to you courtesy of Kakesa Pan Emporium, where you'll find pan products you never knew you needed. Check them out at kakesa.com and get a free Pan Players podcast keychain with your next purchase. Thanks for tuning in, and don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share. And turn on the notification bell so you know when we release the next video. Until then, Kute Cheo.